Sometime last year I did a teaching, and the teaching had to do with the errors of the nation of Kenya, and I was highlighting the errors that we have gone through as a nation, and I also spoke about the era that we are in at the moment. And within that particular understanding, which if you have not listened to that particular teaching, I greatly recommend it, because it has a lot to do with the fact that as a nation we've gone around full circle. What that means is every nation, when every nation is formed under the counsel of the Spirit of Might, because the formation of nations has to do with liberty, and it has to do with gaining sovereignty, and in the ambit of the operations of spirits in the realms of men, the might is a prerequisite of that. But not only might, but the counsel of might is a prerequisite of that. And I also spoke about how that the seven spirits of God have their own respective counsels, and the spirit of might, which is the era that we are in presently as a nation, that spirit has its own counsel. And the counsel of the Spirit of Might is made up of the other seven spirits, but now these spirits are serving under the other six spirits, which are serving under the Spirit of Might. And I remember I was asked a question, and the question that I was asked is, what era are we going to enter into as a nation after the era of the Spirit of Might? Now, the interesting part is that the era we enter into as a nation next is dependent on whether or not the administrations of the Spirit of Might in this particular era are going to be realized or otherwise. And the administrations of this Spirit, they are subject to the thrones of the era of the Spirit of Might, because every era has its own thrones. And every spirit has its own thrones. So when we even talk about the Spirit of Might, it has 7 thrones. There is a throne of might, there is the throne of wisdom, the throne of knowledge, the throne of understanding, and of course there is the throne of counsel. And you come from the throne of counsel, you come to the throne of the Spirit of the Lord. And then of course there is the throne of reverence, or the throne of the spirit of the fear of the Lord. Those are 7 thrones. Those are thrones that are active in every era and in every age. And as far as the present era is concerned, one of the things that is happening in the spirit is that there is a shift of systems and structures. See, it is more or less what happens in the realms of men. It's more like what happens in the realms of men, because in the realms of men, whenever a leader comes into play, they come into play with their own respective vision. And the vision that they carry, it's a vision that has an element of the vision that God has for a nation. And that specific vision and its administration is entirely dependent on the spirit that is ruling within the era that the president or the king comes into. Now, the reason why I'm saying the king is because in the spiritual realms, we are looked at as kings, and presidents are looked at as kings, and nations are recognized as kingdoms. They are not recognized as countries, so to speak. They still maintain certain particular perspectives and certain particular perceptions of understanding and interpretation. So within the understandings of the realms of the spirit and the understandings of the perceptions of men and the perceptions of spirits, a president is a king. A president is a king. And the interesting part, every king has a throne. So the king of this nation has a throne. And we tend to think that thrones are archaic and that thrones are things of times past. No. Thrones are creatures, and every nation has thrones that are creatures. And those thrones that are creatures are subscribed for that specific nation and for that particular nation. And the thrones of a nation have interests in the nation, because those thrones have a subscription of activity. They have destinies that they must carry out. They have administrations that they must fulfill. And whenever men are electing kings, spirits participate in the elections of kings. Spirits sit down and spirits elect men. Before men elect men, spirits elect men. And spirits elect men according to the evolution process of the nation. And not only the evolution process of the nation, they also elect men according to the present state of consciousness of that particular nation. I've said this before, that when spirits look at nations, they look at nations as a single entity. So when you talk about the nation of Kenya is an entity. Whatever nation you talk about, that nation is an entity in and of itself. And each and every single one of us, we are a unit within the consciousness of that particular entity. We are an identity within the identity that is that particular nation. So when I talk about Kenya now, I am an identity within this nation, a unit of the identity within this nation, and this nation is Kenya. So I am an identity within Kenya, and I am Kenya, you are Kenya. So in the ambit of that particular understanding, in that particular reality, so the nation itself has a destiny, and the destiny of the nation is administered through the identities in the nation. So you find that the destiny of each and every single individual is part and parcel of the destiny of the nation, and contributes to the destiny of the nation. Still, the evolution of the consciousness of each and every particular individual also contributes to the evolution of the nation itself, as far as the general identity is concerned and the general being that is the nation is concerned. So we find that every leader that is appointed over a nation is appointed to rule and to administer the realities of the soul that is that particular nation. Notice I said the soul. Why? Because nations are not merely just identities, but they're identities that carry and have souls. Nations have souls. Nations have souls, and the souls of nations are located in capital cities. The souls of nations are located in capital cities, and the thrones of nations are also located in capital cities. When we talk about thrones, it's because you have different types and different kinds of thrones. So the throne that I'm talking about now, it is the throne of the presidency, or the throne of the King of Kings. Now, the reason why the president is the King of Kings, it is because every nation has a king over it, and it has kings who rule in it. There are kings over and there are kings in. There are kings over and there are kings in. Now, we have thrones and we have the throne. So we have the throne of the president, and we have thrones of kings. We have the throne of the king, and we have thrones of kings. For instance, when we talk about governors, governors are kings. Governor is a king. He's ruling over a specific territory. He's ruling over a specific section of the nation, and that section has its own respective throne. So whenever you find that a nation and the administrations of a nation are being divided, that means that spirits have already made arrangements and have already appointed thrones over specific territories. So territories have their own respective thrones, but the throne of the king is located in the capital. And when we talk about the intelligence of capital cities, we are talking about the intelligences of the soul of the nation. So the soul of the nation is located in the capital city itself. And the capital city becomes the center point, or the concentration point of the energies of a nation, the concentration point of the destiny of a nation. This is the intelligence of capital cities. Capital cities carry the throne of the nation, and the throne of the nation is the center point of the activities of the nation itself. It is the center point of the activities of the king. It is the center point of the activity of the gods, lords, and kings that rule and dominate the nation. Now, I'm speaking both in physical and in spiritual terms. So when you find that our leaders have gathered in the capital, it is not simply in physical terms, but it is also in spiritual terms. And oftentimes or not, a physical gathering of leaders is preceded by a spiritual gathering of leaders. So you find that spirits have already gathered, and spirits have made rulings, and spirits have made decisions, spirits have made judgments. And when leaders are gathering, men are gathering, they are gathering to administer the rulings of spirits, and they are gathering to administer the judgments of spirits. I want us to understand that. Why? Because every nation has its own spiritual government. Every nation has its own spiritual government, and the spiritual government of that particular nation is the driving force of the administrations of the physical government. So the physical government is a reflection of the spiritual governments. Notice I'm saying governments, spiritual governments. You have the physical government and you have spiritual governments. Now, when we talk about spiritual governments, these spiritual governments are in layers and structures, and they are in specific and particular rankings, because the election of kings has an order. The election of kings has an order. Kings are not just elected haphazardly. No, kings are elected according to protocols. The same way you find in the physical realm that kings are elected according to protocols. Kings in spiritual realms are also elected according to protocols. And part of the protocols have to do with the protocol of origination. So when we're talking about the protocol of origination, it is the protocol of spiritual origination. It's the protocol of spiritual origination, and that has to do with the realm from which the king has come from, as far as the realms of God are concerned. Why? Because every rule and every reign of any and every king, it is in the ambit of the 7 realms of the governance of God. We're talking about the 7 spirits. And leaders embody these spirits according to different degrees of realities within the infinite realities that reside within the spirits, the 7 spirits of God. So you find that whenever a leader has come into play, that leader has come into play according to spiritual origination. And spiritual origination has a lot to do with the eras of the nation itself. Every nation has its respective eras according to the administrations of the 7 spirits and according to the functions of the 7 spirits. Now, one of the functions of the 7 spirits and one of the administrations of the 7 spirits is to administer themselves. Spirits administer themselves. It is in the nature of spirits to administer their own nature. Natures are systems of administrations, and natures are administrations in and of themselves. So whenever the spirit, like for instance now in there of the spirit of might, so the spirit of might is administering itself. It is administering its nature. It's administering its dimensions. And the dimensions of the spirit of might are, they are the 6 spirits. Now, inclusive of itself, you find that the spirit of might has 7 dimensions, and those 7 dimensions are the responsibilities of its administration. That it is going to administer might, it is going to administer knowledge within might, it is going to administer wisdom within might, and so forth. Because it is its era. It is its era. So within this specific era, you find that at some particular point in time, if the president that is ruling now is not from the spirit of might. If he's not from the spirit of might, he can receive empowerment from the spirit of might, and he can receive an empowerment of the spirit of might. But this is also according to vetting. Leaders are vetted in the spirit. And when these leaders are vetted in the spirit, they are vetted by spirits. And they are vetted according to the spirit that has been appointed to reign within a specific era. For instance, our current president is being vetted and has been vetted, and not only him, but spiritual leaders have also been vetted. And this particular vetting, it is a vetting that has happened, number one, according to origination, but not according to origination alone, but according to usefulness as well. Because the spirit of might has an agenda, and that agenda must be administered. But in order for a spirit to administer an agenda in the realms of man, it needs to have an agreement with men. There must be an agreement between spirits and men in order for spirits to administer their own realities. And this is why spirits do vetting. This is why spirits do selections. This is why spirits do appointings. This is why spirits put upon men and demand from men consecrations. Because every spirit has its own vision of administration, and you cannot transgress the vision of a spirit. Because when you transgress the vision of the spirit, you do not receive empowerment from the spirit, and the spirit becomes offended with you. Why? Because the field of operation for the spirit is its vision. Spirits are very structured. They understand the protocols of function. They do not transgress their ranks. They do not transgress their ranks. They function within their rankings. And visions are the field of operation for spirits. A spirit will not go beyond its own vision. And when a spirit goes outside its own vision, that spirit has defiled its rank, that spirit has defiled its ordination. So that means that the spirit has broken protocol. The spirit has broken protocol. And when a spirit breaks protocol, the spirit is punished. There is a consequence for spirits even when spirits break protocol. Even when spirits misbehave, because they can misbehave, there is a consequence for that. So after spirits have done vetting, if a man is not useful to the agenda of the spirit, if a man is not useful to the agenda of the spirit will reject the man. So if our president is not useful to the agenda of the spirit of might, the spirit of might will reject him. And the point of rejection will be the state of the heart. The point of rejection will be lack of alignment as far as vision is concerned. As far as vision is concerned, that is one of the places where you find spirits rejecting men. Spirits reject men because of an absence of vision. Spirits reject men because of breaking ordinations. Samuel was rejected because he broke an ordination. And not Samuel, King Saul. King Saul was rejected because he broke an ordination. And the ordination that he broke is this: he offered a sacrifice. That was not within the ordination of his kingship. But when you look at King David offered a sacrifice. He even put on an ephod. He put on the clothing of priests. He ate the showbread in the temple. Yet he was not rejected. Why? Because that was within the ordination of his kingship. Kings carry different ordinations, even within the same spirit. kings carry different ordinations. The ordination of Samuel was just not Samuel, the ordination of King Saul was an ordination of kingship alone. But the ordinations that came with David, they were ordinations of a king and a priest. David was both king and priest, but King Saul was purely nothing more than just a king. And here is the issue. You see, when he broke ordination, the spirit of might, because David was an embodiment of the spirit of might, the era of the kingship of David was the era of the spirit of might. That is why you see that the men that surrounded him, they are called the mighty men of David. They are called the mighty men of David. And David functioned in the ambit of the spirit of might. But that spirit rested on him and came to him and empowered him, because King Saul broke the protocols of that spirit. It was the same spirit, but people have different protocols, different ordinations within the same spirit. So the ordination that he was operating in, the ordination King Saul was operating in, it was an ordination that did not permit him to function as a priest. And the spirit rejected him. And that spirit went to David. So you find that the administrations of the spirit of might were shifted from King Saul to David. Yet it was the same era, it was the era of the spirit of might. But there was a shift of administration, even as far as the kingship was concerned. Yes, King Saul was the king still, but according to the view and counsels and ordinations and perspectives of the Spirit and of the Spirit of God, the throne was empty, though it was occupied. There is such a thing in the Spirit as empty, occupied thrones. There are thrones that in physical terms they are occupied, but in spiritual terms they are empty. Now, a couple of years ago, I gave a prophecy and I said that Kenya, we are in a Saul David situation. This is not only in the context of the church, but this is in the context of politics as well. And what that means is that in the nation of Kenya, we have people that have occupied thrones, but they have been rejected by the spirits that function within this era, the era of the spirit of might. So that means that the scepters that come with the thrones, and the thrones themselves, they are empty. They are occupied, but they are empty. And those spirits and the administrations of those spirits have shifted to other people. So we are led by people that have broken ordinations. And the Lord give you understanding. We are being led by people that have broken ordinations. That is why the Spirit has moved, the Spirit of might has moved. Even in the church, we are being led by people that have broken ordinations. And so the Spirit of might has moved, it has shifted. Yes, these people are still serving, yes, these people are leading, but they have broken ordinations, and the Spirit has moved, and the Spirit has shifted into another generation. The Spirit has shifted. That's why several years ago I taught about the Spirit of David, and I've been talking about this for the past, I think probably it's now for the past 4 years I've been talking about this. So it has shifted. We have empty thrones in this nation. A couple of years back we used to meet in Nairobi at Coffee Plaza, doing our one body service there with Pastor Brian. And remember, during the services, one of our services, I had a vision of empty thrones, and I saw empty thrones looming over the city looking for occupants. And I understood that there is a vetting that is going on even now. There is a vetting that is going on. There are those that have already been elected and selected spiritually, but they are yet to occupy the thrones of the spirit of might. So remember we said that every spirit has its own thrones. So when you talk about the spirit of might, it has 7 thrones, and it also has 7 scepters. 7 thrones and 7 scepters. Those 7 thrones and those 7 scepters, they are empty. They need to be occupied. Those are the active thrones in this era, and those are the active scepters in this era. So you find that the subscriptions, the administrations, the consecrations that exist within this era, they carry the reality of King Saul, and they carry the reality of King David. So you spoke about the spirit of David. So you find that within that particular reality, there are those that are consecrated as kings alone by this spirit, as rulers alone by the spirit of might. And there are those that are appointed and consecrated as priests and kings by the same spirit. If those that are kings break their protocol and they try to function like David, it's going to be a problem. There's going to be a problem of administrations as far as the interests of spirits over this nation is concerned. Notice I say the interest of spirits. Why? Because spirits have interests in nations. There are different categories of spirits. There are principalities, we have powers, we have thrones. Every nation has its own principalities. Every nation has its own powers. And every family has its own principalities, and every family has its own powers. Now, the thrones, the family thrones, and the family principalities, and the thrones and principalities of nations, they meet as far as the election of kings is concerned. Not kings over only, but kings in. Not kings over nations alone, but kings in nations. They meet. Why? Because when he spoke about origination being one of the factors that determines election, it is because ancestry in both physical and spiritual terms is a consideration. And when you read the book of Joshua, chapter 7, we talk about how the nation of Israel was defeated by Ai. You find that God reveals how the election of kings happens, how even the election of priests within a family happens. It has different structures. There are structures of consideration. There are structures of consideration. And on top about these structures of consideration, we are talking about structures of consideration. We are talking about one of the things that they look at. Of course, they have to look at the territory. They look at the territory itself. So they also go through the protocol of the spirits that govern territories. That's another protocol that they follow. The spirits that govern territories, they go with that, because every person exists within a particular territory. So they go through that. The territory itself, they have to go through the governance of territories. That means the governance of, they have to deal with the councils that rule territories, because territories are ruled by spiritual councils. So they have to also have meetings with these particular spirits. And when they have meetings with the spirits, they move from having meetings with spirits that rule territories, and they come to now the family government. And when they come to the family government, they move from the family government. Then they move from that family. And even before you come to family, you have to go to the clan government or the ancestral government. And they go to the clan government. You come to the clan government, you move from the clan government, you come to the family government, you move from the family government. From the family government, you come to the individual government, because you are a government by yourself. And even when you talk about the tribe, they look at that because that is part of ancestral government. You see, when we talk about tribes are governments. They are governments with structures and they are governments with systems. That is why every tribe has its respective cultures and traditions. So in those cultures and traditions, they are governments. So they also look at that and they also consider that. And they consider the ordinations of bloodlines. Now they are people elected by spirits through an act of mercy. And the people elected by spirits through an act of justice. When you talk about an act of justice, it has to do with the merits within a specific bloodline. Bloodlines have merits according to the becoming process of the family self. Even when we begin to speak about tribes have their own merits according to their becoming process. See, the function of governments, one of the functions of government is to facilitate becomings. And tribes have their own governments, and those governments facilitate the becoming of that particular tribe. And when that tribe becomes, their possibilities locked within tribes. Whatever tribe you're in, their possibilities locked within that specific tribe, according to the becoming process of that tribe in the ambit of the government that rules within that particular tribe and the governments that rule under the tribal government. Because now there we're talking about clans. Now there we're talking about families. Now there we're talking about individuals. You see, and this brings me to a point. You see, if we are to come to the governance, to the true structure of governance of the divine beyond the governments of becoming, and we come to a place where now we've moved beyond the governments of becoming and we've come to the monarchy and the structures of the monarch, the structures of the governments of God, where it is written in Christ Jesus, there is a Greek, there's neither Jew, and there's neither Hebrew or whatever, meaning that one of the realities that characterizes a president or a king that is fit within the perfect will of God and within the perfect government of God, because we have different governments of God, is one that has transcended and overcome the tribal government and the governments within the tribal government. You have to get to a place in Christ where who you are in Him is superior, where Christ is superior in you than where the government of the divine, where the government of God is superior in you compared to your cultural, traditional, tribal, and family governments. So Christ was saying in Him there's neither Jew or Greek. He was pointing us to a higher system of governance where one is ruled and one rules by kingdom principles, by universal laws, and not by human systems. Not by human systems, not by the structures of the tribal and the structures of the clan and the structures of the family governments. Because I say this, and this is the truth, any leader, any president, any king that comes into authority. We are not just ruled by that king, but the family self of that king is also ruling us. You see, some of the issues we have, now what I'm about to say might cause a bit of an issue, but it's the reality anyway. One of the issues we have as a people in the world, globally speaking, I'm speaking to the global village, one of the issues we have, and one of the things that contribute a lot to the troubles of nations, is governance. The governance of nations is influenced by the interests of ancestral governments. Ancestral governments have interests as well. There is no government that lacks an interest. And these are some of the things that spirits consider when they are electing men. They consider the family governments, they consider the ancestral structures of governance. Why? Because in essence, when a man is elevated to rule other men, it is their ancestry being elevated as well, and it is the ancestral government being elevated as well. So there are particular protocols that are followed by spirits within the family courts, within the universal judicial systems, where universal governments of God, spirits, the kings and the lords that rule over nations, they sit down with the ancestral government and they handle matters that might interfere with the interests of the throne of the nation. Because families have their own thrones, clans have their own thrones, the tribe has its own throne, and these are ancestral thrones. And these thrones have their own interests, and the interests of the thrones of the ancestral government structure, it has to do with the people. It has to do with the people. And not only with the people, it has a lot to do with their own kind. Their own kind. Because kinds of thrones deal with kinds of people. So when we talk about ancestral thrones, these are kinds of thrones, and they deal with a kind of a people. They deal with a kind of a people. This is why sometimes you see when a certain particular man comes into authority from a certain particular tribe, he develops his own community. He goes to his own people and he does things in his own people. It is not just a matter of affinity, but it is also a matter of the interests of, it is also a matter of the interest of the ancestral governments. Excuse me for a moment. So there is that particular interest, that particular influence from the ancestral government. Because, you see, any man that has not overcome his ancestral thrones and the diverse governments within his ancestry, physically speaking, he's still subject to their influence. He's still subject to their influence. You notice what I said previously, that the exaltation of a man from a particular tribe is in effect the exaltation of the ancestral thrones. And there are protocols that spirits follow. There has to be conversations between the thrones of a nation and the thrones of a kind of people. There has to be, so that the interests of the thrones of nations can be administered also through, in, and by the thrones of a kind of a people. For instance, let's talk about Kenya presently. You see, we are And it's not just something that applies to our nation, it cuts across every single nation and every single reality of existence within the becomings of men and in the becomings of men. So you find that for our nation now, our president is Kalenjin, so that particular throne, the ancestral thrones within that respective ancestral throne, they have an influence, not only in him, but they have an influence in the stake of the nations. Why? Because there is an interest of a kind of a people. There is an interest for a kind of a people. And there is the interest of the people. So there is an interest of a kind of a people, and there is the interest of the nation itself. And most of the time, when you see we have administration issues, it is because of a collision between the throne of the nation and the thrones of the nations with the ancestral thrones, with the ancestral throne and the ancestral thrones. And there is a collision. And there is a collision between the two. Which you begin to see why, because there is a conflict of interest between thrones. And that conflict of interest can be an interest that is not even known by the president himself. Not just the president, but also as far as the kings in nations are concerned. This is the reality of things. This is how things operate in the spirit. There is an election of men, but the election of men has protocols. The election of men is preceded by engagements between different types and different kinds of governments. A man is an embodiment of governments. I represent governments. You usually say, oh, I represent the government of God, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, if you have not transcended the governments of men, if you've not transcended the governments of men, if you've not transcended the governments of your ancestry, if you've not come to a place where in Christ Jesus there is neither Kikuyu, Luya, blah, 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 or whatever, you've not yet come to the fullness of the government of God. That's why scripture says you must die to the self. Dying to the self means dying to your physical ancestry. It means transcending your physical ancestry and coming to a place where it is in Christ there is neither. In Christ there is neither. And until we come to that particular reality, we are going to see certain challenges persist in the world. And this has a lot to do with understanding global events. Understanding global events. Why? Because you see, in the ambit of global events, one of the things that happens is that the process of the election of man in the kingdom of God and in the kingdom of darkness considers the ordinations of bloodlines. It considers the ordination of bloodlines. And not only the ordination of bloodlines, but it also considers the becomings of bloodlines. It also considers the evolution of bloodlines. Blood evolves. The voice of the blood and the voice in the blood is a consideration. And there are a kind of a people that are chosen and given particular thrones. You see, every tribe, every family, every community, every clan, the different structural governmental realities in the ambit of individuals, they exist within kingdoms. And the thrones of kingdoms are scattered amongst a people according to protocols, according to spiritual protocols. And these spiritual protocols have to do with the interest of the throne of the kingdom. Now, one thing I want to say is that the throne of kingdoms are creatures. And this is where I bring in what is happening in the nation, and what has been happening in the nation, and what will happen in the nation if a certain particular issue is not dealt with. You see, the throne of this nation of ours, the creature that is the throne of this nation, it has interests. As I said previously, every throne has interests. Thrones have destinies. Thrones have visions. And when a man sits on a throne, the throne inspires the man. Thrones carry inspirations. Thrones carry inspirations of activities. Why? Because civilizations are built around thrones. Civilizations are built around thrones. And thrones command powers. So we have thrones, and we have thrones of thrones. And then we have powers, but we also have thrones of powers. And we have the throne of power. Even powers have their own thrones. And thrones have their own thrones. Authorities have their own thrones as well. That is why you hear about King and King of Kings. That is why you hear about Lord and Lord of Lords. That is why you hear about power and powers. And all of these have their own rankings and have their own governments, and they have their own structures. There is a government for powers, there is a government for authorities, and there is a government for thrones. And within these governments, there are rankings within the same reality. Every reality has rankings of itself in itself that is itself. So when we talk about the throne of this nation, it has its own interests. It has its own vision. The throne of the nation is the carrier of the inspirations that are necessitated and required as far as the administration of the spirits that rule over this nation and spirits which have an interest in this nation are concerned. Notice what I said, spirits that rule over this nation and spirits which have an interest in this nation. The spirits to whom nations are given. That means that their activities are subscribed within a specific nation. But there are spirits that approach the heavens to request to partake in the destiny of a nation. You see, the administrations of the king of a people attracts spirits. There are spirits that are already here by assignment, by destiny. And there are spirits that come to the functions. There are spirits that come to the functions of the destinies of nations according to the administration of the possibilities of the destiny of a nation. There are spirits that gain interest in nations according to the progress of that nation, according to the evolution of that nation, and they present a petition to the universal judicial systems and they say, I want to be part of the destiny of this nation. I want to serve in this nation. There are spirits that do that. And spirits do that. It's not just good spirits, it's also evil spirits as well. And let me tell you something. This has a lot to do with what we saw recently as far as Macron is concerned, the president of France. His coming was not the coming of a man. His coming was the coming of a principality. His coming was the coming of a throne. Whatever agreement that was signed between Kenya and France, it is an agreement that revealed the operations and agreements of spirits in above the realms of men, the spirits that rule this nation. and the spirits that have an interest in this nation. In this specific instance, we begin to understand what happened between President Ruto and Macron, Kenya and France. It has to do with spirits that have an interest. Not spirits that were given Kenya as a field of destiny, but spirits that developed an interest according to the development of the nation. Now, this development, it's not in the positive. It's not in the positive, it's in the negative. And I can say that fully. It's not in the positive, it is in the negative. You see, the activities of the throne are either in the negative or in the positive. And there are spirits, both in the negative and in the positive, that have interests with the destiny of nations. Why? Every nation has positive and negative destinies. Every nation has positive and negative destinies. And whenever a king sits on the throne that they sit in, it's a throne that carries possibilities. You see, the throne is an intersection of possibilities. And again, the structure of the consciousness of the king and the heart of the king is the focal center point of the positive and negative destinies of a nation. So the heart of the king is a center point, a center activity point. It's an energy activity point. It's an energy system of administration as far as the destinies of the nation, of a people are concerned. So the state of his heart and the interests of his heart determine the course of the destiny of the nation, and not only the destiny of the nation, but determine the course of the destiny of the people. Why? Because the destiny of the nation is the destiny of the people. That is why when spirits meet, they discuss men. When spirits meet, they appoint men. Why? Because the destiny of a nation is in the destiny of the people. Let me say this. This is something I want us to understand, that what is happening now, and I've said this before, we are in the spirit, we are in the era of the spirit of might, and the administrations of the spirit of might within this era determine the kind and types of souls that are attracted to the nation. You see, governments, one of the functions of governments in spiritual and physical terms is soul attraction. The administration of governments determine the conception of souls within a nation. If a nation is not functioning within its ordination, the kind of souls that nation will attract, they are going to be souls that are according to the nature of the throne. You see, the king of a nation carries an influence that determines the kind of souls that are born within a nation. Yes, they can be, and it can be, and it is that the souls that will come will be from from the sphere, the realm of the spirit of might. But they can come both in the negative and in the positive. They can come in the negative and in the positive, meaning that the condition of the heart of the king is an instrument of the throne of the nation. But beyond that, we have positive and negative thrones. We have positive and negative thrones. And we have different and diverse structures of governments. every government has its own possibilities of governance within the different types and kinds of the will of God. And the different types and kinds of the will of God, they have their own respective thrones. So the king of a nation functions from different thrones according to the type and kind of the will of God that the king is in. Notice what I said. The king is in. The will of God that the king is in determines the will of God that the nation walks in. But also, the will of God that the people are in determines the kind of throne the king sits on. Let me repeat that. The will of God the king is in determines the throne, the type of throne that the king sits on. And it determines the kind of throne within the type of throne that the king sits on. Again, the type of the will of God the people are in determines the type of throne the king sits on, and determine also the kind of throne within the type of throne that the king sits on. Now, when we understand that, we also understand that different thrones have different agendas. And a king can shift and migrate through different thrones and in different thrones. Why? Because thrones reject kings. Thrones reject kings. The throne that Saul was supposed to sit on, that throne rejected him, and that throne went to King David. And the throne that King Saul sat on was a different throne. There are different types and different kinds of thrones, according to the different types and different kinds of the will of God. Because every type of the will of God is a type of government, and every kind of the will of God is a kind of government within the type of government. We belong to the government of God. Even if you're a believer, you're in the government of God. But which kind of government of God are you in? And what type of government of God are you in? Because the type of government you're in and the kind of government you're in within the type of government you're in determines the type and kind of destiny you are administering, and the type and kind of timeline you are walking in, and determines the type and kinds of possibilities you are walking in and administering. And it also determines the types and kinds of spirits you are working with, and the types and kinds of spirits that you attract. Macron didn't just come to this nation to come. No. It is the administrations of the king that attracted him here. It is the nature of the heart of the king that attracted him here. Why? His coming is not just his coming. His coming is the coming of a spirit. His coming is the coming of a throne. And in order for thrones to be attracted to a nation, a throne is attracted to a nation if that throne and the one sitting on that throne agrees with that throne that has been attracted. That has a lot to do with the law of attraction, and not only the cosmic law of attraction, but the cosmic law of balanced interchange. That means there is an agreement of frequencies and there is an agreement of vibrations. That means there is an agreement of spirits. There is an agreement of governments in spiritual terms. There is an agreement of governments in ancestral terms. There is an agreement of the kinds of governments in the ancestral government. We'll do a part 2.